Hey, good morning. Scott Luton, Greg White with you right here on Supply Chain. Now, welcome to today's live stream. Gregory, how are we doing today?
We are doing great. How are you doing?
Fantastic. It's been a very productive week. It's been a gorgeous week after about 4 days of rain passed through Metro Atlanta, it feels.
Yeah.
And we're excited about, hey, today, Greg, we're excited about having our dear friend, the one and only Lora Cecere back with us, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it feels like forever since we did her session, but man, and we traveled in the meantime. It just
Right.
feels like a lot's been going on, hasn't it?
Yes. It's
Wait,
been a month. Go ahead.
well, I was just going to say, I have to do this. I can't believe I'm going to do this, but actually went to a bank today, Scott, and they were shorthanded like everybody is. And I needed to get an account set up and walked in, and there was only one other banker in the place, and this poor guy is sitting at actually kind of a really cool desk right as
Right.
you come in. He has to greet everybody and direct everybody to where they need to go and assess whether they've got an appointment and all this stuff. I just watched this guy, Ben Beard. I just watched this guy just handle everybody with precision. I wish, you know how we would like to do those people on the street videos, right? I really wish I had something to take a video with because he was just amazing.
Really?
We'd be talking to one person, find the perfect time to go, how can I help you? Hey, thanks for coming in. Hey, can I help you with this? They're running a little bit late over here. It was an orchestra. It was really amazing to watch. I know that sounds crazy, but it's just one of those things that when it strikes you, you just really, really appreciate it. So
I love it.
anyway,
Customer experience at the bank, CX with Greg White. Here we go. New show coming up.
there you go.
Well, I love that. And I
You
love that
never
you
know
are.
how to do it.
It is great to be back in person. And yes, it's been about a month and a week since the Supply Chain Insights Global Summit. We've gotten a ton of great
Right.
feedback around that. We'll probably touch on that with Laura. And yes, we spent the week before last, or maybe last week it was in Miami. That was great with our friends at Omnia Partners.
Right.
And we've got some other things on the docket. I tell you, October, we're almost halfway through, but tons of activity. And by the way, talking about that kind of that man, woman on the street interview, I had lunch yesterday with Tandria Bellamy. Yes, the Tandria Bellamy.
Wow.
I can't share all the details. She retired from UPS after almost 35 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
As we both know. And now she's on to some really big things. And it was so cool to break bread with someone in person and catch up. But anyway, we've got about a 3-minute one big thing series we're going to be starting where I ask folks, okay, give me one big thing you're thinking about right now when it comes to global business. And Tandria, of course, knocked it out of the park. So stay tuned for that, Greg. And I'll make sure when we get together next, probably next week, I'm going to ask you 17 big things with Greg White. You got to have a deluxe episode.
Do 17 episodes. Yeah.
So, all right.
Well,
folks,
17 episodes.
We're going to say hello to a bunch of folks that are tuning in from really around the world. So thanks so much for being here. South Africa, Kenya, here in the States and beyond. But really quick, I want to share a couple of free learning opportunities, market intel gathering opportunities. See if I can add this to the stream here. So Lora Cecere is going to be with us here momentarily, but you can also join Laura and I and our friend Dr. Madav Durba on November 9th, 12 noon, as we talk about not just supply chains now, but supply chains of 2022 and beyond, practically and successfully and in a non-lip service manner, building resiliency and agility into these global supply chains. And Greg, that's tough to do. There's a lot of lip service around those terms these days, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of flat ignoring it, I think. Frankly, I mean, I think to build that, what we consider real agility and resilience, most companies, as Laura has told us repeatedly, they just aren't committing to what it takes to get there. The kind of technological advancements that are required to really get there. So
that's right.
Actually, we'll ask her about that today. See
we should.
if she's seeing any kind of shift there, right?
That is a great topic. And then, so join us on November 9th. And then also join us a little bit before that, October 26th, which is just about less than 2 weeks away. Greg and I, we're going to update this graphic. Greg and I will be chatting with Ron, Mary, and Rob. Ron's with UPS, Mary's with Crocs, Rob's with Sunjoy. And if you don't know Sunjoy, a lot of furniture making. So, Greg, you and I have heard about these long lead times when it comes to patio furniture and couches and beyond. So, we're going to dive into the supply chain squeeze on October 26th. Okay, and the link for that should be in the comments as well. Okay, so Greg, let's say hello to a few folks before we bring in the one and only Lora Cecere. How's that sound?
Yeah, let's do that.
So, hey, Michael Avery, great to have you back here today. Yes, go Atlanta Braves. Big series win against the Brewers. But hey, next, between the Giants and the Dodgers, it's all uphill from here, right, Greg?
Who do you want more?
Oh,
I mean, we get
man.
home field against the Dodgers, so I got to believe that's a tough row to hoe either way.
It is. Either one of those teams will certainly be the favorites. We got to axe the grind based on how last year's NLCS went against the Dodgers. So that'd be fun to have that opportunity at least. But their rotation I'm most fearful of, especially some of the veterans there. And of course they've got Trey, the shortstop from Washington. I can't think of him now, but he's terrorized the Braves forever. But then again, the Giants have had the Braves number. So we'll just roll the dice and see what happens. And I'm just, I'm savoring this. I'm savoring that we just won the first round and at least we have a chance to play in the NLCS. What about you? Who do you want out of those two teams?
I want home field. I know it's tough either way, right? But
right.
We're outclassed from a pitching standpoint either way. So, but I'd take home field as maybe the X factor there.
That's a better answer. So let's go with that. So we'll become Dodgers fans, I think, just for tonight, and we'll see what happens starting on Saturday with the NLCS. But Michael, great to see you here today. We have Tariq is with us from South Africa. Tariq, thanks for joining us via LinkedIn. We'd love to hear from you. Let us know what you're thinking as we work through this conversation here today. I don't see Lee Hoffweber, but he's with us. And Lee, great to have you back.
Yeah.
He was with us
too. I mean, there's a few names here we haven't seen. Well, I mean, we haven't seen comments for a while. You never know if they're just out there, but
right.
Yeah, that's good.
Dr. Hadoon is tuned in via Kenya and via LinkedIn from Kenya. Great to see you here today. Sajit tuned in via LinkedIn. He loves something you said, Greg.
Probably the experience with the bank, I'm guessing. Yeah, because I saw that Felicia said she needs Ben Beard to run her house. I'm telling you, you could do worse. This cat was amazing, really amazing.
The legend of Ben Beard coming to your theaters.
I know it sounds silly, but it was hard to explain how overwhelming what he was experiencing could have been. But he just handled it like a pro.
I love it.
I asked my questions, got out of his way, and then was at, now banks are set up kind of like a Starbucks. So I went over to a tall table and was kind of finishing up what I was working on. And I was just kind of hearing it off to the side, everything that was going on. And it was just astounding what he was doing. He could tell people how long they were going to wait, tell people what they could do instead of coming into the branch to do it. And I mean, just his persona was just fantastic. I should have recorded it. Yeah.
Well, the legend of Ben Beard is alive and well here. It's like Bill Brasky, and we'll keep his spirit alive and all of his good CX work. Let's also say hello to Stacy, who's tuned in via LinkedIn from Zambia. Great to see you here, Stacy. From Zil, and if I said that wrong, I apologize. Let me know. This is becoming my favorite time of the day. Appreciate this platform from Johannesburg. From Zil, great to see you.
Yeah.
Catherine McCleary, a fellow Kansas City Chiefs fan, tuning in from Kansas City via LinkedIn. So, Greg, really quick, what's going on? What's one adjustment the Kansas City Chiefs have to make?
Fire the defensive coordinator. That
is big.
I mean, there's no way to repair the lack of organization and effort. It feels like the defense is always on the back foot. They are never coming downhill at the offense, and that's not the way we play football in Kansas City.
I love it. Well, Catherine, hope this finds you and your family well. Our thoughts and prayers are with you for sure. Tanya Lamb, also our fellow SAPIX leader, is with us here today. Tanya, hope this finds you well. Lee Hoffweber, I'm here. So
Yeah,
great
look,
to
he
see you.
even brought his own audience. Look at a couple of posts down there.
I love
Right,
it.
he's even got colleagues leaning over his shoulder.
I like that new headshot, by the way.
Yeah, that's
Lee.
very cool.
And then one final, Jose is back with us from Southern California. Jose was on a previous episode. We were comparing desserts, and there was a great dessert that he mentioned as one of his go-tos. And I'm not going to remember the name of it right this second. But regardless, Jose, great to have you back, and look forward to hearing what's on your mind today. Okay.
Have him remind us what that was.
Yes.
I'm going to need to know when it comes to dessert. I need to be in the know.
Well, talk about dessert, talk about luxury, talk about go-to resources today.
And in the know,
Greg,
yeah.
And in the know, that's right. Today we've got the one and only Lora Cecere here with us. And I want to introduce her really quick, and then we're going to zoom her in. She's founder of Supply Chain Insights, which probably we all know, author of the popular blog Supply Chain Shaman, host of the long-running podcast. She was perhaps podcasting before podcasting was cool, Straight Talk with Supply Chain Insights. And what I love about Lora, one of the things, we love lots of things. One of the things is her mission is simple and singular: to help supply chain make the world a better place. So let's welcome in the one and only Lora Cecere.
Thanks,
hey,
guys.
Laura, how you doing?
Swoosh. There you are, Laura.
I'm all swooshed, right?
Well, you got to get a booster in 6 months.
I already have my booster. I'm triple jabbed.
Triple jabbed. Okay. Well, good deal. Well, hey, we had a great time in the pre-show conversation as always. There's always 1,000 things we can catch up on. But Greg, we're going to kind of exchange hats here. So where are we starting with Lora Cecere today?
Well, let's start with something fun. So, we're always trying to figure out how we can distract people from the pains of supply chain, Laura. So we love to start these things talking about anything else. And tomorrow is National I Love Lucy Day. So I'm curious if you are a sitcom watcher, and if you are, what's your favorite, either now or all time, or call it?
I'm a huge fan of Andy Griffith and MASH, but I do really love that I Love Lucy assembly line segment.
Oh my
right?
gosh, yes.
So supply chain, right? It's so typical of what's happening now, right? But
totally forgot about that episode.
I can go down the trivia lane with you on about any of them because, I watched a lot of them as a kid growing up in Southern West Virginia because there wasn't a whole lot to do.
Yeah, station.
Well, also, What's Happening Now is a sitcom. It was a follow-up to What's Happening. So, I got to add to that esteemed list you've already shared, Laura, The Office. Our kids have loved The Office. It's amazing how long that show has been off the air. But Greg, what are some of your favorites?
Well, I would have said MASH first. I mean, just
it's such
amazing.
A hole that it left, right?
Yes. Yeah, it was amazing how they took such a whatever you want to call it, tragic situation and made it comical. And the way that they could switch back and forth between drama and comedy was fantastic. The characters in it were real. I mean, even like Klinger, the outlandish characters were real. I mean, you could really relate to them. So yeah,
Agreed.
I love that show. And I got to tell you, I haven't watched a lot of the new sitcoms. I never watched Friends. I've only watched one episode of Seinfeld, and I'm embarrassed to say which episode it is, but it had to do with a license plate, words on a license plate. And so I haven't watched a whole lot of TV, frankly, in the last 12 years or so, because I was running a company and pretty much heads down and extracted myself from the popular culture. So what about you, Scott? I think we know what's number one for you.
Well, Andy Griffith is a big one. We grew up on that. Carol Burnett's show, that was also on TBS growing up. The Office is one of our all-time favorites, and we watch that now. And I also want to, Michael is a Seinfeld fan. Folks, let us know what y'all grew up watching. I'd love to hear. We'd love to hear.
Or if you haven't grown up, what you're watching.
Right.
What you're watching now.
And Jose says it was, Greg, help me here. This is the dessert.
Sofis e la Guerra?
Yes.
I don't know what that is. That sounds Italian.
Caramelized crushed pineapple, pound cake, hot caramel sauce, and creme anglaise.
Yeah.
Ooh, Laura, how good does that sound?
I'm sold.
Sounds pretty good, but I'm on a diet.
Okay. Well, let me take that off. Let me take that off really quick.
Yeah, don't even put it on the screen.
I'm headed to go swim after this, Gotta get these pounds off.
So let me quick English lesson for me. So I really appreciate the clarification here. It's Pumzil. It's pronounced as a P, not an F. I appreciate your patience with me. Pumzil. So great to have you here with us. And of course, Emmanuel is with us as well. Great to see you here via LinkedIn. And Catherine says, The Office is on in my house every day, and my kids are obsessed. I'm with you, Catherine. Okay. So
that's what Clay does when he's working. He told me he just leaves the office going all day long. So I don't know. I don't know how he can do that. I have to have music with no words in the background when I'm working. I just can't.
He kills it. Team Clay all day. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no doubt.
So, Greg, where are we going next? We're going to surprise Laura. Well, I guess it's not so much of a surprise. We were going to surprise Laura.
So we have to give an athlete their due. So understand that Freddie Mercury got a blue ribbon, right? Is that Best in Show? Anyway, a blue ribbon at the, is it National Terrier Show? Tell us more.
The National Terrier Show, it's actually a global event. People bring their animals across the world, and he is a Skye Terrier. He was born in Czechoslovakia to astrophysicist, and I picked him up in Prague and brought him to the United States, and his name is Freddie Mercury, and he was what was called Best of Winners. And I ended up in dog shows because I promised the breeder he wouldn't sell him to me unless I would show him, and that's the whole journey in itself. But he was a winner, so welcome Freddie Mercury.
This is not a stock photo. That is an actual photo of Freddie Mercury, right?
Right.
That's right. That's right.
That is a well-groomed dog. That is so impressive. Is that a golf cart?
Yeah, he's in a golf cart. He's on his way to have the official show photographs. So when they, did the winners, they put him on the golf cart and took him back and redid his hair.
Oh my God.
And he's on his way to get his show pictures done with his little ribbon. And, so he's now downstairs being a couch potato,
Love it. I bet his haircut is more expensive than mine, Laura.
Well, you don't cut their hair, but you got to, groom them once a week. And so, it's,
every. You mean you never, ever cut their hair? You just let it.
No, that's right.
Knows the right length to grow to. That is amazing.
That is amazing. Really quick, I want to share a couple of comments before we move on to the heavy lifting. But anyway, congrats to Freddie Mercury, the one and only Freddie Mercury, for the big win. Let's see here. Mohib is with us from Wichita, Kansas, where Greg was just last week. His favorite was Friends, and now he's rewatching Seinfeld in Netflix. And someone, Greg, earlier,
big news. Seinfeld on Netflix, apparently.
Netflix and Comedy Central. Comedy Central is basically, I think, replacing The Office with Seinfeld all the time. And someone also shared the license plate of your favorite episode, Greg, but I just kind of scrolled right past that.
Good. Oh my God.
Jose loves Everyone Loves Raymond and Jerry Seinfeld.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Michael Aver says a little Van Halen in the background gets you going, Greg.
That's how I start my morning, with a walk or run or whatever, is a little bit of Van Halen.
I love it. Evelyn's with us. Evelyn, hope this finds you well. I really have enjoyed your LinkedIn conversations. Music without words moves my pen, and projects also. Greg White. Freddie Mercury is stunningly handsome. I agree. Gary Smith. Hey, Gary Smith is back with us. He's been on vacation down in Jekyll Island.
He was in Georgia. He didn't come see us.
No
Gary,
kidding. Man, come on, Greg. Gary and Greg. Dangerous dynamo there. And then finally, Catherine says, new requests for these live shows always begin with a dog feature. It's a great idea, Catherine. Okay. So,
wait, as long as we're there,
yes.
Freddie Mercury has a companion, right? And what's that dog's name? I forgot. I'm sorry.
He has two brothers. One's named Grayson and the other's named Edelman, both of which are stories too. But now I have 3 champions in the house.
So they're all show dogs.
They have been.
Oh,
you don't get the dogs without agreeing to show them, because it's hard to get them. I was on a list for 2 years to get one of them.
Wow.
Man, the dog breed's almost extinct.
Go to Prague? I mean, did you go to Prague to get him?
2 dogs came from Prague and 1 dog is domestic.
Okay.
But it's very hard to get them. I was on a list for 2 years, and how I ended up with this breed is a whole story that's longer than the show, but I love them.
So you're telling me the terrier supply chain's broken too, Laura?
I was thinking, what an awesome blog post for is the supply chain of Skye Terriers.
Yeah.
First of all, very rare, and provenance is important.
Right.
And it's a very exclusive client base. Right. Chosen by the suppliers, basically.
Yeah.
Wow.
So who would have thunk? Freddie is the star of today's show. We're all here to support Freddie Mercury here on Supply Chain Now, but we got to get to work with Lora Cecere. We've got an hour or so with Laura, and we have got to pick her brain. And Simon, we'll have to circle back on the astrophysicist statement. Yes, but that is in Freddie Mercury's genes. But Laura, we digress. So thanks for entertaining us with your responses. I want to talk about your most recent blog article, and it's entitled, "When We Don't Have Answers, We Need to Work Quickly to Build Them." And it's really like most of what you write. And I'll tell you, y'all too, Greg and Laura, Greg, between your shares regular on LinkedIn and Laura, your blog articles, you also write a book. But Laura, it's chock full of stuff. One in particular, I want to make sure you tell us about is you talk about in the blog your first implementation of distribution requirements planning, DRP. Tell us that story, if you would.
Well, I was in charge of a warehouse at Clorox, and we were doing this corporate initiative to implement DRP, and I didn't know what DRP was. And I went to the training, and I'm kind of a math geek, right? Because, I always liked math. And so they were telling me about safety stock calculation. And so imagine that I'm running a warehouse in Atlanta that I have to ship 210 trucks a day out of 18 doors, and I have 3 satellite warehouses, and I just don't have enough capacity. And the corporation has decided to consolidate Charlotte into the Atlanta warehouse. And we're now going to have to carry X more inventory for this thing called safety stock. Now, I've been through APICS and, all the certification and, so they have me in the training and I say, tell me how this DRP calculation works. And, the guy that's teaching it just rolls his eyes like, oh, I don't want to answer this question. And I said, well, what about variability, right? Because we're having issues with quality and I'm not always able to ship directly off the palletizer. And how does this calculation handle variability? Laura, just don't worry your pretty little head about that because it's all going to be taken care of in this whiz bang optimization. And I'm like, I don't think so. And so, I'm like, 67. And I think that was a really good question because most planning systems do not take into account variability of lead times, conversion rates, and they don't have a planning master data layer that can inform the optimization on that. And it makes a huge difference. I would encourage everyone to do a manual run through of what the output of inventory requirements are based upon variability on lead times. And I was reading an article yesterday about how much longer it's taken us to get goods out of the ports. But more importantly, the variability of getting the goods out of the ports is what we're not talking about, and is really causing just incredible impact on reliability. So that's my story. And I think people don't ask enough questions on planning systems and assume that they're getting good answers.
Yes. Okay. So I got to come to you next and get Greg your thoughts on what she shared there. But really quick aside, this is the first time I've gotten a good view of, I love your pot system right over your right shoulder, Laura. I've wanted to get one of those forever because our kids, when they unload the dishwasher, they just throw everything under the cabinets. You can't find anything. I'm going to have to get, you're going to have to give me the scoop on how to build that.
You buy it, and
you buy it
and have a, make sure that you've got good hangers for it, because I've got a lot of metal on the pot rack. So.
WilliamSonoma.com. Yeah.
William Sonoma. So Greg, when you hear that story, and there's several things come to my mind, but what's some of your takeaway when you hear Laura describe that?
My initial reaction is anger, because that is precisely what is wrong with supply chain now, is that the technique up to that point had been, this is the way we do it. Remember what we say about best practice and tradition, right? This is the way we do it. Don't worry your pretty little head about things like variability, right? And that is precisely the problem that so many manufacturers are facing today. Is they were told that, they believed it, because most of us, unlike Laura, but like more of us in supply chain around the same time, we weren't educated on supply chain. We didn't know the mathematical principles or the fundamentals and that sort of thing. And so many practitioners were subject to this best practice, which actually was outdated by the time even Laura was learning it, right?
Exactly. And unfortunately, Greg, the focus wasn't, am I getting a good answer? The focus was, let me get that technology in and running and check the box and move on to my next project.
Yeah.
And that is what's so wrong with what we've got now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah, and it's cost us for decades upon decades, because at the same time, and Laura, you know this, at the same time, all of that variability was being measured at retail and at distribution, but not at manufacturing. And instead of manufacturing learning from the other levels of the supply chain, like retail and manufacturing, we've projected the manufacturing view of supply chain down to retail and actually set them back.
Right.
Because, where all the money is spent is where the predominant opinion on supply chain methodology comes from, and all the money is spent at manufacturing because they have all the money. Right. They're the biggest companies. They make the greatest margins, et cetera, et cetera. So we've really harmed the craft significantly by using those old dogmas rather than embracing the questions that Laura was asking.
Excellent point.
Can I say one more thing?
Yeah,
because
please.
I was talking to a lady who does an association for healthcare yesterday, and we were talking about managing multi-tier distribution for healthcare and the issues in COVID, and the fact that they're adopting consumer products models for replenishment. And I said, those models don't fit. We really need to be outside in. And she's like, what do you mean? And so I don't think we question the principles of those engines and what we build enough. So I encourage people to raise their hand and ask the dumb questions.
Yeah. Agreed. Call time out. Raise the hand. Ask the questions not that's going unasked. But I'm going to share a couple of comments here from folks in the skyboxes, and let us know what y'all are thinking, folks. If you've got a story like that from earlier in your career, or if you got a comment on what Laura and Greg just shared, hey, let us know. But one of the thoughts I had, kind of apart from the craft, is Gary had no idea he had Lora Cecere, on his team, and I think about all the Garys out there now. Because there's lots of Lora Ceceres out there now. There's lots of Greg Whites, folks earlier in their career that can go on to be rock stars. And I think there's a management and a leadership lesson to be had there. And it's really to embrace and encourage folks asking good questions, but also, like Laura just said, dumb questions, right? Because they're learning, and there's no telling what they're going to bring to the table that can change dynamically in a big way the operation, the company, the business, and the craft. So I wonder where Gary is now. I would love to sit down and interview him. Well, and Laura may know there's a little tell behind that grin there, Laura. But hey, nonetheless, I want to share this comment here from Michael Avra. He had a manager that used to say, when the house is on fire, you don't think you grab the hose. His point was reaction to the unexpected events is what is critical. Gary says he had to get his beach fixed. He was vacationing in Jekyll Island, so Atlanta's too far out of the way.
I love Jekyll Island, though.
Yeah, beautiful.
Simon, great to have you back. Says demystify the black box. We need open source and clarity. And then James Malley, who's been with us a couple of times now with Pacurate. Most of my questions are dumb, so I'm ahead of the game. James, hope this finds you well.
And there is a lot of brilliance in being the dumbest person in the room. There really is. I mean,
yeah, I got to tell you, that's me.
It is the unasked question that needs to be asked, right?
Mm-hmm. Totally with you, Greg.
So I want to move. There's so much more we can dive into this blog, and we'll circle back on Project Zebra in a moment. But I want to, National Manufacturing Day, kind of switching gears, was just a few days. I think it was last week. I think October 5th each year. I think, if I've got that date right. And we love manufacturing. All three of us here, I know we love the manufacturing industry. I've said it before, and my granddad retired as a machine operator from Kimberly-Clark. But I never had a chance to sit down with him and talk manufacturing, where I'd, spend a big chunk of my time in it or supporting it. And a big reason for that is my lack of awareness. I never stepped foot into a manufacturing plant until long, after college, after the Air Force, after college, you name it. So when I look at Greg and Laura, Annette Clayton, who I believe is CEO of Schneider Electric, she mentioned we've got 4.6 million manufacturing jobs open, and her and her company were hosting an event that invited folks in to learn kind of what it's like to work for manufacturing, which is a wonderful thing. But where my brain goes, Laura and Greg, and Laura, I'll start with you, is that's a huge talent gap, as we all know, right? And it's not new. We've talked about this before, Greg, for years now, really. What does the manufacturing industry need to do in terms of how they get the word out, in terms of what people's conception, parents, students, you name it. It's a complex issue. Laura, what does manufacturing need to do to change its approach to fill in that talent gap?
Well, I think that it really requires marketing, that manufacturing and making things is fun. And when I led manufacturing teams, it was a community, right? When we did high performance work teams, and we built skills, and we built communities, and we help families to do better. I think the core and the heart of manufacturing is not well communicated by any of these associations. And I also think that, part of the challenge, and I have a lot of respect for Annette Clayton, right? She's CEO of North America, Schneider Electric, my very favorite end-to-end case study. I encourage everyone to read what I've written on Annette Clayton. But I think we have not made manufacturing too career family friendly in terms of daycare and, helping with, all the issues that families have. Manufacturing has to work on, clocks and checking in. And, it's hard for a two career family, with illness, and particularly right now with COVID. Our daycare, our educational systems are a big barrier for us to really improve employment.
Well put there, Laura. Greg, I'd love to get your take on this.
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant insight. We're making something, right? I mean, how many people get to see a product being made these days? I mean, I think that's so powerful. I think about when I was a little kid, my mom worked for ITT Continental Baking, which then owned Hostess and Wonder Bread. And on Saturdays when she had to work, because she was a single mom, she would take us and we would go into the factory and watch them make ding dongs and ho-hos and cupcakes, and I figured out quality control also by watching that. And I also figured out the benefits of quality control because they blow the ever so slightly too small ding dongs off to the side in a bucket, and then they let you eat them.
And they're still good, right?
8 years old. So, but I mean, I think the making of it, that the product that you put your hands on or you put your work into goes into a package that everyone recognizes and goes onto a shelf somewhere. I think there's a lot of pride in that, and I think we've frankly forgotten that. We think everyone wants to be a YouTube star, but the truth is there are lots of tiers of people in our society, and some of them want to work.
Yep.
Ben Beard clearly wants to work. Suna, who is a friend of my daughter's who goes to school with her, he was sweeping the floor at a Costco, and he was doing a hell of a job, I might add. And that was just one of the things that he did. So there are people that want to work. And there is work that's honorable and impactful to the world that you can put your hands on, right? You can say, I did that. So I think marketing is a big part of it. Hell, I think we just nailed their marketing thing. I did that.
Well, it's about hands, it's about heart, it's about community, and I think we miss that connection. And one of my very favorite parts about running manufacturing was opening the door of the factory. I'd move from the car and my mind would be all into it, and then I'd open the door of the factory and I would listen for the rhythm. And the rhythm of the machines told me if I was going to have a good day or a bad day, and it told me where I needed to go. So if the machines all had a certain rhythm, I'd go to my office because I knew that they were working. If I didn't hear the right rhythm, I knew that I needed to dump my stuff in the locker, put my safety shoes on, put my hard hat on, and get out there and help the team. And so being part of a team and understanding the rhythm of manufacturing was a great experience for me.
I love that. I spent some time in a metal stamping operation, and you're absolutely right. Especially when the big presses are pumping, you can feel it in the floor. And I love that point, that cadence. You know the good feel, you know the bad feel, Laura. I want to share a couple quick comments here. This goes back to a point both of y'all were making. Stacy says, I remember I had our supply manager telling a group of us what was going right, and I took a step back and asked, what's going wrong? And we resolved a lead time problem that wasn't resolved for years or hadn't been resolved for years. I love that. Yeah. Stacy, thank you for sharing. Calling those timeouts are so critical. Jason says, Greg, great point. It is exciting to see something that comes from nothing. So, and what was that phrase? I made that. I made that. Yeah. We need t-shirts that say I made that. And then finally, Catherine also loves manufacturing. She's a former marketing manager for manufacturing here. Thank you for sharing, Catherine. You probably love that industry as well as we do. And Gary says, I was once told that manufacturing is the one endeavor that creates true wealth. And I have never forgotten that. Love that, Gary. And you're nodding your head there, Laura. You agree?
Yeah. So I went to the Wharton School of Business, and there were 250 people in my class. I was the only person that had ever been in a manufacturing plant.
Wow.
And I remember when I went to the finance class, the last class, he had a quote on the board that I'll never forget, that finance is the art of moving money until there's nothing left. And manufacturing is the art of building things that create lives. And I'm like, I love it, right?
I love that. Greg, such a missed opportunity to have 250 people in the most prestigious business school in the land. I think they wouldn't let me in, so I'm not sure. I don't know a lot about business schools, but only have.
I had to look up Wharton real quick while we were doing.
Only have one.
I know. I've worked for a lot of people that went to Wharton, so I know exactly what.
But only have one person with firsthand manufacturing experience.
Yeah, it's tragedy, isn't it? I mean, I was thinking about that. To get an MBA at the most prestigious business school in the world, and to have never laid hands on business as such, at least from a manufacturing standpoint, that seems like a travesty, right?
Yes.
never even been in a factory, right? Not like they have managed a factory. They had no concept of what a factory was.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the issue was the disparate salaries that attracted, people into different job segments. And so I think we need to make manufacturing more attractive. But it's about making things, it's about heart, it's about community. And at the end of the day, it's about feeling good because you really did something.
Agreed.
Yeah, you delivered something to your fellow human beings, right? And I think
Right.
there's a lot
I
of
love,
honor in that.
I love ding dogs.
Me too.
Well, we got to reach
Too much, as a matter of fact.
we got to reach not just the potential employees and team members and talent that makes up the manufacturing industry. We got to reach their parents, which a lot of folks have called like their first consultants, right? We got to convince them and get the message to them that it's not like it's the 1920s, not taking anything away from that decade, but the
We're
manufacturing
not
industry has
working in
changed.
steel mills anymore, right? It's not the dark, dirty, and dangerous identity of manufacturing is totally. I mean, it's totally out of sync with our times, because
Well,
it's much more technologically enabled. I mean, the factories, they're not just clean; they're like, many of them are spotless because of safety and because of the type of products that they're building and that sort of thing. And they're bright and really encouraging workplaces to be in, frankly. And again, you're building something.
well, and when I told my mom and dad that I was going to go manufacture Pringles, so I was working for Procter and Gamble, my dad said, "I don't understand why you don't want to be a nurse or a teacher. It's just so much better for a woman's career." And I often think about, we don't teach that, these are great careers.
Yeah.
Agreed. But I'll tell you, while I agree with what both of you are saying, and Greg, you're right, the environment by and large has changed dramatically. However, I'd challenge everybody to at least tour one foundry in your lifetime. I had
Absolutely.
the good fortune to tour one up in, I believe, Cartersville, Georgia. And I thought I'd seen a lot of, I've been in and out of probably 300 manufacturing plants in my career. This one, when you got cauldrons of molten, iron. Oh, really? When we finished that tour, I felt like I needed a Budweiser and a Marlboro Red cigarette, man, because we had done something.
Well, that's what everybody else was doing.
Right. But the people that make those factories happen, whether you're talking about the new age, forward-looking, high tech factories that Greg, you're kind of alluding to, or the more traditional, that can be like the foundries, that we got to have them as well. I mean, the people, it really reemphasizes in anyone's brain, the people is what drive manufacturing, supply chain, and more forward. Laura, you were going to add something?
I think going to all kinds of manufacturing is just, whether it's cutting gray goods and apparel, or, making food, or, stamping, or building airplanes. I encourage everybody that can go to any manufacturing tour to hop on in, because it's just fascinating to see how we make things.
Agreed. It's best thing that you can do to learn and to really challenge your assumptions is get out there and tour plants. James makes a great point that I think lots of kindred spirits here. James says, I think most of us hope that our life's work adds something meaningful and lasting to the world. James, man, that's poetic. And yes, I agree. And Mohib, on a lighter note, says, here's one good question. Dumb question. How interesting would supply chain now be without supply chain variability? Well, we got a show for that. It's called Supply Chain is Boring, right, Greg? All right.
And the best supply chain are the ones that don't make news, right? Basically.
Right. And I think we all would wish that supply chain was just a little bit more boring these days, but I'll save that for a later conversation. So, Laura, one of the things that you're doing, leading, facilitating, you name it, is Project Zebra, which is one of the objectives there is to get us to unlearn and think differently as an industry. But no, I want to make sure folks know where it got its name from, because I think that's it's a good story, and it really brings meaning to why it's named Project Zebra.
So the genesis of Project Zebra is for 2 decades, I've been an industry analyst and I've been struggling why we don't use channel data. And every manufacturer has channel data in different formats, whether it's rating review data, cookie data, point of sale data, weather data, and why we don't use supplier data. And it comes in different formats, telematics, GPS, supplier, and we don't use that data. And for the last decade, we have spent 1.7% of revenue really making the functions very efficient, but making the supply chain weaker. And we have focused on transactional systems, not the ability to use market data. And about 2014, what I saw was a real decline in industry performance across 26 of the 28 sectors. And I'm just really frustrated. And, I've been, advocating we really need to use market data. We really need to build end-to-end orchestration. And that, in my mind, is so different than what we have today. So I went to all of the traditional vendors and I did, like a Lora rant, like Greg's participated in Lora rant, because I've got a lot of energy. I got a lot of heart, right? And I just really said, what we've got is not good enough and we're not using market data. And, I really laid it on heavy, as you can imagine, Greg, all the vendors, right? And they all dismissed me like, you haven't seen our latest technology or you don't really understand what we do. And I'm like, I understand it is not sufficient. So I went to '09 and '09 says, let's build it. So we started Project Zebra, and the name came from the story that originally zoologists felt that zebras didn't change their stripes, that they were born with the stripes and the stripes didn't change. But over time, they found that when zebras go to different habitats, the stripes change. And so the question is, can we get traditional supply chain thinking to move differently and business leaders to change their stripes? Because I find that when we have conferences where we have lots of very senior supply chain leaders, they steal all the oxygen out of the air because they know the answers, but our current practices are not sufficient.
So, part of unlearning and rethinking and reinventing and very successfully changing how global supply chain happens is elevating the conversation. Laura, you and I have talked about that a lot.
Absolutely.
And I got to bring Greg into this. I'm going to maybe surprise him a little bit, but I've had the good fortune of working with Greg for, I don't know, close to 1,000 episodes, it feels. And that elevated conversation, when you're having it, right? And Laura, for our event, we had a blast working with you and your team at the event about a month and a week or so ago. And you remarked to me, enjoyed all of our conversations, but in particular, you're like, that Greg White, he really elevated the conversation. So speak to why that's important. And so first off, big high five to Greg, because I enjoyed that all the time. Laura, of course, we learn a lot from you as well, but talk about why that's so important.
Greg has heart. He's walked the road and he gets it. Lots of people don't get it. And it's not just about selling software. It's about driving better answers. And Greg has heart. I like that.
Awesome. I agree with you. In by the truckload, and and oftentimes they'll wear it on a sleeve, and that's important because just like you, Laura, we talk about how you tell it like it is. We got to have more of those conversations in supply chain and global business. That's how we're going to break through all of these assumptions that have been placed, for decades, holding the industry back. Laura, you mentioned in one of your last appearances with us that the pandemic isn't necessarily what broke supply chain. It was broken, a decade ago or so is what you and Greg both have chatted about. So
about 6 years ago, we started to see a real breakdown because we really didn't design for global supply chains, and we made very efficient supply chains that were extremely brittle, and we started to see lots of breakdowns. And we continued to invest in the wrong stuff, and we really looked at traditional practices thinking that they were best practices. And we didn't have the courage to question what we were doing. And I think the pandemic is actually a great segue for us to build better and for us to learn the error of our ways.
I completely agree, and that's a big old silver lining to the tragedy and all the pain that we've all had on so many different levels. But that's the opportunity we have. I want to, Greg, I'm going to come to you next and get your take on what Laura's talking about. But Stacy says we're lucky to have people like you, Laura, who have heart for the profession. And Gary says, Laura, what you're talking about is the basis of critical thinking. A critical thinker is able to change his or her mind in the face of new information. Excellent point, Gary. Well said. Okay, so Greg, some of what, based on what Laura's just shared there about the basis of Project Zebra or these landscape shifts we're talking about, what sticks out in your mind?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we have to do in regard to supply chain is not assume that everything is working well just because things are going right. I was the most irritating of children possibly ever, because when my parents would say, this is what, this is the situation, I would say, why? Yeah. And I think we need to do that more. Why are we going to the zoo? Because there are animals at the zoo. Why are the animals at the zoo? Because that's where they keep them. Why do they keep them there? Because they want us to be able to see them. Why do they want us to be able to see them? I mean, that was an actual conversation with one of my uncles who almost left me at the zoo, by the way. We were deciding whether they were going to have children. So my dad rented me out for the day, and they still decided to have children, if you can believe it. But I think that's one of the things that we have to do is we have to challenge the status quo, right? Best practice is just code for defense to the status quo,
right?
Defending the way we've always done things. And I think even when things are going right, we have to, one, ask why they went right, which rarely happens. Somebody mentioned that earlier in the conversation. Why did things go right? Don't just be satisfied that they went right, because it could have been we were just riding a wave of blessings that got us there. I was taught that by Paul Rose, who was the chief supply chain officer at Henry Schein. He would ask, why did things go right? Why did we succeed often? And that's a very useful tactic. And the other is, if it ain't broke, break it. That's just the way that I operate. Is I'm always wondering how it could be. I often say I'm always happy but never satisfied. I'm always, even if things go right, I'm going, how could they have been better? It's frustrating for people who work with me, because the celebration's about this long, and then the how do we make that excellence even better is like this long. Scott's grinning because he's had this conversation. But that is what we need to do in supply chain, is not just accept that things went well. Find out why and find out what could have gone better, because that's always the case. And to Laura's point, we introduced this fragility into the supply chain with, as you talked about at your conference, Laura, these siloed metrics that said we're doing great in plant floor efficiency, we're doing great in inventory efficiency, but nary the twain shall meet, right? And we need to not only address those silos, but also address the constant seeking of what we call optimization, which is usually economic cost minimization at the expense of real risk balancing, right? Supply chain this is the way I say it. I don't know, Laura, if you agree in any measure or not, but we have treated supply chain for too long as a cost minimization methodology or practice, and it's really a risk balancing practice. Cost being one of those risks, but also the ability to fulfill being the alternative risk, and somehow finding the right equilibrium of those things to make sure that not only can we fulfill today, but into the future.
Okay. So nary the twain shall meet. I got to remember that old English. Laura, respond to two-point question. Respond to what Greg was sharing. Agree, disagree. And then also, as Jose says, we need to learn more about Project Zebra, and that's where we'll finish the conversation today. So respond to Greg and then tell us about how we can get involved in Project Zebra.
So I think that the supply chain should be about balancing opportunity and risk to a strategy. And the discussion around cost should be a discussion. And only 29% of companies can measure total cost. Only 2% can measure margin at the speed of business. And we let a lot of opportunities lay fallow because we're very focused on functional cost at the demise of the supply chain. And we've been lulled to sleep that if we just get that big ERP project in, we'll be all set. And it's made us very brittle and inflexible. And lots of people have made a lot of money. And I'm hoping that we can have a real hard discussion about how we screwed up the supply chain last decade as we watch what's happening.
Agreed. Good stuff
Project
there.
Zebra. Project Zebra, there is a website, projectzebra.org, and we're finished with Project Zebra Phase 1, which is really to map the 18 capabilities of outside-in processes. And we did 2 test pilots, one with BSH, they make great dishwashers and refrigerators, and also one with Western Digital. And the question was, what are the capabilities we need to build? And so we were working with ASCM on that, and we're trying to drive the changes in the score model, because the score model single threads plan through deliver, then through make, then through source.
Right.
And then we have these levels where we have to consume the data, and it's very hard, and we're not really embracing what we could get with new forms of analytics. So the 18 capabilities were documented so that we can test them. We tested 2, and market-driven demand management with BSH, which showed that they had a negative 4% forecast value add on their current process, and also that it takes 4 months to consume market data, 4 weeks for process discussions, and they totally missed the market on allocations. So it's a great case study to watch, which is on YouTube. And then Western Digital, which was a logistics group, which was looking at how could they improve freight reliability to improve customer service. And they were looking at first pass tender, the reliability of first pass tender, the reliability of logistics, and how that ties to the market-driven knowledge graph, which is a balanced scorecard to look at customer service and cost and margin in real time. So I'd encourage everybody to look at the case studies. We are opening up Project Zebra and a reverse RFP on middle of January for people that want to come and pilot other capabilities. And ASCM is doing an open call for people to work on the technical committee to rewrite the score model. So both of those are things to come, and I'll post them on the blog.
Wonderful. Laura, I really appreciate that. ProjectZebra.org. And of course, your website, Supply Chain Shaman is one of them, .com.
Right.
Right. And then, of course, supplychaininsights.com as well. And you can find, I think, Laura, we've got all of the presentations and recordings from the summit at supplychaininsights.com, which is really great. Good stuff. Okay. So, Greg, well, we're about to bid adieu, unfortunately, to Laura. There's so much more we need to get into. But well, Laura's here. Before we swoosh her back out, what's your favorite thing that Laura shared here today?
How much grooming our dogs need. I don't know how you have time between quilting and grooming these dogs to do what you do in supply chain. I can only believe that you developed these as hobbies, because otherwise you would have obsessed day and night about supply chain and how to improve it. So I think it's a great lesson for folks, honestly, seriously, no matter how deeply you care about or embed yourself into something, to have other things to do, right? Take up fishing or sewing,
birding,
or dog showing, right? But I'm certainly glad that you have always been there. It sounds like, to ask the questions, to kick us in the shins when we need it from a technological standpoint, to challenge leaders, because we watched you do it at your conference. You know, Scott talks a lot about lip service leadership. Everybody's saying they're going to do something, but so very few of them are actually doing it. And we need to see the tide turn. We need people to turn towards these new methodologies, to challenge the status quo, to forget about, or to challenge at least best practice and determine what real best practice is. And I don't know, I just really enjoy having these conversations, because it's refreshing. It really is refreshing to know that there's someone else out there trying to change the status quo.
Agreed. Hey, really quick, Laura, you talked about to close it out. You talked about the Andy Griffith Show being one of your favorites. Something Greg just shared there reminds me of one of my favorite scenes. You got Andy Griffith and Floyd the Barber, and they're debating of who said this saying that everyone talks about the weather, but no one ever does anything about it. And kind of to steal a note from what Greg shared about supply chain, we got to change. We got to. The pandemic has given us the gift of a big time lesson learned, and we can't do things like we've always done them, and in a very perhaps bigger way than ever before. So Laura, big thanks. Lora Cecere with Supply Chain Insights. We look forward to reconnecting again with you soon.
Bye.
Thanks, Laura.
Have a good day. Well, hey, bonus footage.
She doesn't want to leave. I was afraid of who else might be gone when we came back this time.
Man,
you, Scott.
I didn't have extra notes with Laura. I was worried that maybe there's a surprise pop quiz on the last hour. But hey, one of our favorite conversations that we have regularly, just about every month, with Lora Cecere, and it really, we talk about this a lot, but also it came out in the Skybox comments, is the passion that's there. I mean, if you're not doing it with passion, is it really worth doing it at all, Greg?
Yeah, I don't think so. But at the same time, passion is not sufficient, right? I mean, obsession is required, I think, and Laura has that. And the other thing is misdirected passion is as dangerous as anything else. And I think what's so unique about what Laura does is she's a big thinker. And I don't mean like big giant head. Oh, Third Rock from the Sun. I should have thought about that. That's one of my favorite sitcoms. She's not a big thinker, like, just ethereally thinking about things and kind of throwing concepts out into the air. She's actually actively trying to get people to execute some of these things, to challenge their own thinking and to do something about it. Not just go, yeah, probably ought to think about that differently, but to really think about that differently and then to apply that different thinking to practice. And I think that is so critical.
Well said.
We need it so badly now.
It's not about going to a dinner meeting, passing some business cards, and then going back to work as usual. Things got to change. We're at loggerheads in so many different ways. And right now it's a pandemic. What's next? What is next? And rest assured, or maybe not rest assured, there's something in that blank. Between cybersecurity, geopolitical conflict, you name it. But on a much lighter note, I agree with you, Mohib. Soon enough, it will be like, want to be like Laura. Like, instead of want to be like Mike, it's want to be like Laura, especially in thought.
I'll tell you what, I wish more people could really challenge themselves to do that, to really question the status quo in that way. And to approach this whole sort of craft with a different mindset. It's not easy. It takes years to really change your mindset like that. Agreed.
Stacy says she agrees with you being part of the supply chain. We constantly need to be that annoying kid, ask, and improve. Yeah. Catherine, thanks for sharing the zebra-project.org. So maybe we got that rearranged, but we'll include it in the show notes. So thank you, Catherine, for that. Jose, appreciate your feedback. Great segment. I can relate to many of the info shared today. You three are fabulous with your knowledge. How about that? Shared. Hey, really appreciate that, Jose. Thanks for being here, and we look forward to you being back. Poomzil, great to see you. Look forward to seeing you on the next episode. And with that, Greg, we're about 3 minutes over. I want to thank you for your time today. We really enjoyed the conversation with you and Laura. Safe travels with your next trip next week. I won't let it out the cat of the bag where you're headed, but I look forward to lots of pictures.
Yeah. After we get back, my security detail won't let me post anything.
That's right. Well, hey, safe travels. Look forward to the stories and the pictures. Have a great time. And folks, thanks so much for being a part of this live stream discussion here today. Big thanks to Lora Cecere, who always brings it, just like Freddie Freeman, Mrs. Reliable. Freddie Freeman always brings it. Lora Cecere always brings it. Big thanks to Jada, Amanda, and Allie, all behind the scenes that help make the production happen. And folks, we'll see you next time. Join us Monday, 12 noon Eastern time for the Supply Chain Buzz week in and week out. as reliable as, well, usually I say the U.S. mail, death and taxes, but maybe
Death and
that
taxes,
ratio is
definitely.
changing a little bit. What'd you
Yeah,
say, Greg?
definitely death and taxes.
That's right. And Felicia says, go get some video of the one and only Ben Beard. We'll do just
You
that.
know, that is a great idea, Felicia. I think I'm going to try and do that today.
Folks, have a great rest of your week. Most importantly, folks, do good, give forward, be the change that's needed. And we'll see you next time right back here at Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.